At the end of March 1942, less than 4 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Army started removing tens of thousands of Japanese Americans from their homes and communities. 2/3 of these individuals were U.S. citizens. Half of them were under the age of 18. These individuals were not given hearings or charged with any wrongdoing, and yet they were removed from homes they had spent a lifetime building.
It was such an odd feeling. And as we pulled out, I can remember my father holding onto the arm of the seat, hard seat. The blinds had been withdrawn, but you could, before they did that, you could see the shadow of the Mount Adams and the sun behind it. And and looking at his face, I could just feel that he was saying goodbye to the place that he had known so well. Pictures like that, just really, when you think about it, were very sad, but it was such a, it's hard to explain the kind of feeling, the atmosphere of that time. But and we traveled through the night with the shades drawn and got to Portland Livestock Center, our evacuation center really about dawn. And I stayed until the last person got into the compound and heard the gate clang behind me. And I think when people ask what my memory was about evacuation, I think I'll always remember the sound of the gate clanging behind you. And knowing that you were finally under, had barbed wires around you, and you were really being interned.
Japanese Americans were brought to temporary detention camps that the government called assembly centers, set up at racetracks and fairgrounds. Living conditions were crude in these quickly assembled temporary quarters. Many were angry as they saw how little their U.S. citizenship protected them.
I had been to Puyallup a few times when it was the fairgrounds of Western Washington. Little did I know that I would replace the pigs and the cows and that type of stuff, because they restructured the fairgrounds and the parking lots into these temporary hovels. And they had a hell of a lot of nerve calling it Camp Harmony. But anyway, it was, it was a real traumatic type of living, where you're in the former stalls where the pigs and the cows and everything else were temporary shacks that just the walls went up so many feet off the ground, and families of 6 and 7 were crowded into one little spot. And I think intentionally I forgot a lot of Camp Harmony. I hate to use the word harmony, but it was just not a very good experience. I just felt that all this liberty and crap was all crap. It just, you read so much about democracy and all this, and it was a real eye-opener to see what could happen to citizens and what does citizenship mean. Because it just bothered the heck out of me to think that I tried to be a good citizen, and man, they're tossing me into joints like this.
After a few months, Japanese Americans were moved to 10 incarceration camps in sparsely populated and isolated areas, mostly on unused desert or swampland under federal control. These detention facilities were located in the states of Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming. 120,000 Japanese Americans lived in barracks in these camps, surrounded by barbed wire fences and armed guard towers. In 1945, after 3 years of incarceration, Japanese Americans were allowed to return to their homes on the West Coast. For those who returned to the West Coast, it was difficult, as they were confronted with hatred or they found their homes vandalized and property stolen.
Well, it was a great shock. Couldn't believe it, how anything could be left like that for us to come home and face. It wasn't as hard for me as it was to my parents, because they were the one that had cleared the land, built up that land to make it to a farming ground, and they worked real hard on it. All the windows were broken, every room, the wallpapers are torn, the linoleum was all pulled out in a mess, and of course the outside was, the weeds are about 6 feet tall, every piece of ground outside, and the greenhouse we had, all the glasses were all broken down and couldn't use the greenhouse when we got home. And so it was nothing, and the well was, of course, full of garbage.